Thank you for inviting me to sharing my thoughts about the future of corporate learning. And I am the first non-Bahasa speaker this morning, and I have a habit to speaking very fast. So I hope that the interpreters will not struggle in following me. And Pak Isan from Pertamina has promised to wave his hand if I'm a little too fast and have to slow down. So congratulations to our hosts, Pertamina and Ruang Guru, for this extraordinary event. I'm very impressed. I will discuss with you how we see the future of corporate learning evolving and the future of corporate universities evolving, and that's based on our experience with working with corporate universities. Also in Indonesia, we worked with Pertamina Corporate University, and we think that the evolution that we see is valid for advanced economies as much as it is for emerging markets. There might be a time lag, there might be some Indonesia-specific issues, but more or less I think this is the forces at work will be global and impacting all economies. My input will be structured in three parts. First, I would like to share with you a couple of observations around trends and forces that will impact labor, employment, and jobs in the next 10 or 15 years. Secondly, I would like to discuss with you how that changes the context for learning within organizations and corporations. And then I would like to share with you how we see corporate universities engage in a transformation journey. Some are already well advanced in their transformations, others are still in the planning stage, but it's a transformation ahead of the learning functions everywhere. So let me start with my views on the future of work. It will be different. Let me start with my first observation about the transition from the industrial age to the knowledge-based era. And we are very well equipped in understanding the industrial age and how to run hierarchies, how to manage productivity within an industrial system by really building foundational skills and expertise in flawlessly executing work procedures. What is different in a knowledge era, and you see it at the bottom, that the power shifts from the organization more and more to the individual. The intellectual property, the expertise sits with individuals in a knowledge-based environment. And you could say the assets walk out of the door every evening. You have more and more subject matter expertise, which are much more self-organized, define their priorities by themselves, and creating really a productive environment in the knowledge-based era is still a challenge. There is limited research of how to drive productivity in a knowledge era. It's much more around empowerment. It's much more around purpose and inspiration. Leadership will be much less focusing on the own vertical silo, but much more horizontally connecting teams beyond the organization. And that's certainly an interesting situation we are in, because most corporations, any modern corporation, is a mix of industrial settings in production operations and of creative settings in a knowledge era. And it's a slight movement more and more towards the knowledge-based side, but we live with one foot in the one and the other foot in the other world. My second observation is around the transition from a predictable environment, and we heard enough this morning already about the VUCA world that we are facing, a world which is much less predictable, much more disruptive, and the talent practices that we still apply in our organizations in terms of how we design organizations, how we build hierarchies and job descriptions and career paths, in how we performance manage people, and also in how we orchestrate learning. All of this has been built and rooted in the industrial age and in a world which was predictable and was built on lifelong employment and long-term perspectives. And now we are faced with a world which requires responsiveness, adaptiveness, agility, fast moves. The Minister of Manpower has alluded to this challenge for labor markets. And you see here organizations which need to become more agile and are faced, and the Minister of Manpower alluded to that too, with people who are not used to live and think their careers in stages and in agile manners, but they are seeking security. And the transition from this left side, the highly predictable, to a more agile world requires changes on the side of how organizations are run, but also in the attitudes and mindsets of people in feeling comfortable to operate and work in uncertain times. And that will require a total new set of talent practices. We will move from hierarchies to talent marketplaces. We currently have a major discussion around the world about the way we performance manage people, and that we come from an annual review to an ongoing check-in and coaching process. Third observation is around the fourth industrial revolution, where the Minister of Education this morning spoke about the digitalization of everything. And you see here on the left side just a snapshot on 2017 statistics about what happens in 1 minute, in 60 seconds around the world in terms of number of Facebook entries, in number of Netflix downloads, in number of LinkedIn account openings, in number of emails being sent. This creates a huge amount of data. We talk about digital dust, unstructured data, machines producing sensors data, and all of this is creating an immense new kind of trend. This is to finding and trying to find patterns in these data. That on the right side, you see an article that just was published a couple of weeks ago in the Financial Times about a totally new portfolio of professions around data science, data engineering, statistics, software engineering is emerging out of nothing to deal with the digitization. And we follow up with predictive analytics, with artificial intelligence. The McKinsey director spoke about the artificial intelligence and its impact on work. I come to that in a second. When you now look, and these were three trends which are not independent, they are interdependent and they reinforce each other. And that certainly, you see here on the left side, a statistic from the US Bureau of Labor about 1850 to 2015, around how different industries have employed people. You see agriculture has significantly come down, others grow. And if you look back 200 years, there always have been dramatic shifts in employment. There is just a story of Manhattan, the central part of New York City, where 100 years ago in 1910, 110,000 people were employed in the horse business, in the transportation means with horses. 1920, 10 years later, this was erased down to zero. Nobody was employed anymore in the horse business after 10 years. It's not new that employment is being challenged by new technologies. Now, there is a series of studies being published in the last couple of years about the impact of the trends I spoke about employment and labor going forward. Some are very pessimistic and say this time artificial intelligence, robotization, automation will erase jobs and create mass unemployment. Other studies are more optimistic and say there will be, again, more new jobs being created than jobs erased. But here I cite a study by McKinsey Global Institute that speaks about 2.5 billion jobs around the world. 400 million will be erased. And you see in the country where I come from, Germany, 24% of jobs would be erased. India, which would come closest to Indonesia, that's 9%, in the perspective up to 2030. But they also speak about the opportunities for new job creation in a size of 600 to 900 million, much bigger, but that would certainly require what the Minister of Manpower spoke about, a policy setting that allows multiple jobs during a career, switching profession and jobs, financing, retraining, and you see the number at the bottom, 75 million to 375 million, that's a broad range, would need to change dramatically their occupational priorities and their professions, and there's a huge retraining requirement around the world in the next decade or so. So you see in the subtitle, I call it From Hands to Heads to Hearts. Manual work will be automated. Cognitive work will be automated by artificial intelligence. What is left is empathy, critical thinking, judgment, and innovation, creativity. These kind of humanistic skills will be very important going forward. So what does that mean for corporate learning? I would like to discuss corporate learning and management of human capital along two dimensions, two paradoxes. The first paradox is about improving and optimizing human capital to exploit the current present environment and markets. And you might have heard about this explore and exploit tension, an ambidextrous leadership that you need to explore the future, innovate, create capabilities for the future, and yet at the same time, you need to optimize the current production system, the current capabilities. And the second axis has a second paradox around building strength in terms of identity, in sense of belonging, in culture, and on the other side, building an agile, ongoing, changing, discontinuous environment, and you again have to balance between the two. And the role of corporate universities was in the past very much at the exploit and stability environment. Exploit meaning really to building the skills, foundational skills, advanced skills, to optimally deliver today. And it was to build relationships and reinforce culture going forward. In the world of work that we face, more of the focus will have to move upwards towards driving agility, driving innovation, helping the organization to navigate uncharted waters, less to just look in a back mirror and ingrain the skills of which we are already pretty knowledgeable, that they are important. This is much more working in the uncertainty and allowing the organization to deal with uncertainty and ambiguity. This is a bit of a portrait of the traditional roles of corporate universities. They focused on that blue ring of formal learning, where learning needs are distilled in programs and participants go through that high control environment where the learning function controls absolutely when it takes place, where it takes place, and that's the high control learning environment. And the 5 roles here, not every corporate university has all 5, but these are the 5 we spoke about, are around building really and enable the workforce to execute strategy in terms of performance improvement, building the next generation of leaders and experts, have the leadership of the company debate strategy and how to respond to possible future scenarios and build a shared, aligned view of the world at the top of the house, then support transformation and innovation, and at the end governs the enterprise learning space. Now, going forward, you will see that the filling of that circle, the informal learning, is a low control environment. It happens on the job, near the job, between conversations. And 5 years ago, when I asked senior learning teams and chief learning officers, what are you in charge of? You could debate that for a couple of hours, but at the end, people said, we're in charge of the dark blue ring of the formal learning if push comes to shove. If you put that question today, people recognize we are in charge of the entire learning environment, including the informal learning, if you don't want to lose relevance. And that creates new roles. That creates the role of promoting a learning culture, of creating an environment which is conducive to learning at any time and to become a continuous process. It's to support collaboration across and beyond the platform. It's to enable lifelong learning and also the change of professions and occupations during a career, and many more new roles that will emerge. And you see already here just a collection of different new learning methodologies and technologies that are entering the stage. And around the Ruanguru, video-based learning, e-coaching, e-tutoring, but you have augmented reality, you have gamification, simulations, you have working out loud bar camps, a lot of self-paced, self-organized learning taking place in the informal environment. Here on the left, you have just the normal desk of a modern professional worker with access to YouTube videos, to TED Talks, to all kind of for free information, and corporate universities that, if you look on the right side, have focused on producing the own company-specific content and deliver that content through programs, now are faced with a huge amount of external content which is used and accessed by workers by themselves, and that they need to include in their overall provision of learning. And there is user-generated content, there is community-generated content that cannot be ignored but needs to be, in a very holistic approach, being orchestrated and made available to the individual learner. Now let me, I see I'm advancing my time, let me focus on what we see as the transformation journey corporate universities have to go through. We surveyed our members, EFMD members, and asked two questions. First question, what is and are the major challenges for corporate universities going forward? Second question, what are the obstacles standing in the way to effectively coping with these challenges? And when we clustered the responses, we came to 6 clusters of challenges and 6 clusters of obstacles. Let me go first through the challenges. Let me begin with the digital transformation. As I said before, there are an unbelievably new number of learning technologies, learning methodologies, mostly driven by digital tools, and the corporate universities, corporate learning environments need to embrace the digital transformation. They should support the organizations in the digital transformation by offering digital literacy assessments and all kinds of tools to help and shepherd the organization towards a digital future. They need to curate content. As I said before, we have now so many sources of content that need to be curated and need to be quality checked and be made available. Otherwise, people help just themselves. They need to shape a learning culture. The role of managers in orchestrating learning, in role modeling learning, in allowing for self-reflection and a learning experience, meaning that we much more like customer experience, employee experience, have to think about the daily job of a learner. Is there a lot of commute time that can be used? Have people mobiles? And when I travel here through Jakarta, everybody is on mobile, even on Gojeks, people speak on mobile. So mobile seems to be the tool to access people at any time they want. So much more thinking in design thinking terms about how is it convenient for learners to share and access learning and socialize with each other. Learning analytics is the next challenge in terms of really understanding the major learning needs for the workforce, being predictive about it, but also to personalize learning and very much drive the learning down to a unit of one, to a total personalization of learning paths and learning needs. And then the last challenge is the agility challenge. How can we get much faster in developing and reviewing and refreshing our curricula? How can we, with new themes, allow a 4 weeks turnaround time instead of a 6 months turnaround time to develop new programs? And when I come to the obstacles that have been mentioned, first and foremost, the inertia of the legacy organization. Still a generation of senior managers that have not been growing up in a digital environment, still the own learning function mostly being populated with formal learning experts, with instructional designers, and there is not really a sense of a burning platform. Then there is a lack of new skills. If you look for new skills, you don't find them within the own team, not necessarily with the traditional external partners. So you might need to hire a few people. You might find new partners like Ruanguru to just have a different perspective that accelerates your own transformation. There is a lack of investment in the IT infrastructure and the lack of capability of learning teams to make the business case. Also because we still measure as learning functions too much activities and not outcomes, which doesn't give us really the right data and information to create the right business cases. People complained about bureaucracy, about being often enough part of the human resource function, which would be seen as a support function and not as a value-creating function that has a direct input on the bottom line. So you see there is quite some obstacles, big company, big organization obstacles as always, but putting it together, these are the challenges, these are the obstacles, they make a formidable playing ground for the definition of a learning transformation roadmap. And every organization can create such a roadmap, being opportunistic where to start, and then think about 2, 3, 4 years ahead, how to more and more transform themselves to conquer the new world of learning, informal learning, and digital learning. So thank you very much for your attention.